Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes rundown for Logan. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the line. This is the final movie Hugh Jackman is going to be appearing as Wolverine in. And wow, what a send-off. Watching this film, I was reminded once again of how mercurial the X-Men universe has been in Fox's hands. And this is different results for different films, but Fox has never been afraid to just throw continuity out the window and make whatever flavor of X-Men film they felt like making. You start off with X1 and X2, and those, I would arguably say, really sort of defined a lot of what was important about what the superhero genre could be. You get into some of the more iffy ones, like the X-Men Origins Wolverine and The Wolverine, and now we're here with Logan, and with the reboot as well. You go back to the Days of Future Past, and all of these have done different takes on the X-Men, and kind of been in continuity with the rest of the series, but also sometimes not really. Not to the point where if you can analyze like this happened and this happened and this happened and these people aged correctly and all this stuff, they've been willing to throw all that out to try out different tones and different eras of history and all this stuff. And with Logan, we have yet another time period, yet another style and tone that's completely different from anything that came before it, and yet still feels reverential to what came before it, and even dependent on what came before it. Because what we have here in this film is Logan as an older man, right? Old Man Logan riff, not literally, I wouldn't say an adaptation of Old Man Logan, but definitely pulling on the themes of that comic book. And he's mean and mad at the world, and ultimately I think it would be a very difficult trick to get fully on board with this character, especially at the beginning. He's so off-putting, and yet because we've seen him in these other films, because we're familiar with the character, he gets a little bit of an extra pass because we know that this isn't really him. Or maybe it is, but we've seen another side to him. We've seen something deeper. And I think that this film, drawing on the history of the X-Men like that, is really smart. We see Charles Xavier as an old, and I mean an old man, a senile man. And not completely senile, right? He has definitely moments of lucidity, but he's losing his mind. Him and Logan are holed up in the desert, like trying to keep him from, messing up a bunch of people with some seizures, because once he loses control of himself, he loses control of his powers, and his mental state goes all crazy. And the comic book aspect of this is one thing, but there's just the incredibly human relatability of seeing someone that we've grown up with, at least that I've grown up with, aging to the point where he's no longer able to be what he once was. And I mean, arguably, even in the earlier X-Men films, Professor X was not a young man, but he was very much able to, to handle himself. And here he's finally gotten into the point where, as someone of a great age, he's not able to take care of himself anymore. Logan's stuck taking care of him, along with another mutant named Caliban, who also Logan treats terribly. Like, this guy is going through some crap for him, and Logan gives him no love. We don't actually see why he ends up with Logan and Professor X, but he must have had some kind of really deeply felt debt to them or something, because he's putting up with a lot of crap for not very much return. They're all living out in a shed in the middle of nowhere, just trying to survive and not get picked up. Logan is working as a limousine driver. At the opening of the film, we see him being having his limousine stripped of, or attempted to be stripped of its, parts by this gang. And of course, Logan wakes up, and of course he gives them what for and chops off their arms and their legs, and bad stuff happens. And this is the first I was gonna say the first X-Men film that was rated R. It's not, obviously. Yes, Deadpool was rated R, but this is the first X-Men film where the violence feels this visceral, and it comes right off the bat. Where you have this typical comic book movie hero setup, right? Where Logan's sleeping in the car. They're taking the tires off the car, the wheels, the rims, whatever. I don't know what people like off of cars. They're jacking it up, about to take some stuff, and he wakes up and goes to confront them, and they're bad guys, right? Like they try to shoot him. You know, they're gonna rob him. They're not nice people by any stretch of the imagination. But when he finally starts laying into them, you still feel kind of bad for these guys because the violence is so brutal, and you feel the pain, and you see the blood, and you hear every crack of every bone, and like the screams of agony. And this is a movie that treats violence in a very realistic way, and all the way through the movie, by the way. This is a very much a touchstone. This opening scene tells you the movie's stance on violence, and it's tricky because you're in a comic book movie, right? As an audience member, you're here for the violence, and movie makers know that you're here for the violence, so they want to give you what you're here for, but they also have this stance of this is no way to live your life. This is hell. To go through your life having to defend yourself and killing people, and whatever this life that Wolverine is living, it's a mess. And despite the fact that he can beat these guys up and is arguably justified in doing it, you still feel the pain on their part, obviously, but also just from him. Like, why does violence keep finding me? Why do I have to keep beating these people up and killing people over and over and over again? That becomes a huge theme throughout the movie of him regretting this life that he's sort of been stuck with, that he can't get away from. And they play a clip from the movie, I think it's called Shane, an old Western, where, the hero's riding off into the sunset, and he says to the little boy who idolized him, says, "Listen, don't grow up and be like me. Even if I was justified in killing all those people, it's still," he calls it a brand. He says, "Listen, it's a brand. It never leaves you. You can never get rid of it. It's not a good life to have, and I can't be part of your life, and so I'm going to leave." And you really see that sentiment echoed throughout this movie, that violence follows this man wherever he goes, and he's just sick of it. And he's also literally sick, which is an interesting plot point, in addition to Professor X really going to crap. He's sequestered away inside this big, water tower, going for some kind of, not Leyden jar. What's the word for the thing? The Faraday cage. Thank you. The Faraday cage effect to keep his powers down somehow. It's kind of working, but not really. He has to get medicine. Logan has to get medicine from people to give him. Probably not 100%, honestly. They're living across the border in Mexico, and there's probably something really interesting to be said about the relationship between Mexico and America in this film, especially considering that Logan is a Canadian, which the whole trip, actually, the whole movie is really about him trying to get back to Canada. It's not a funny movie, but I thought about that about like 3/4 of the way through. I was like, this is just a movie about Wolverine trying to get back to being a Canadian. Again, that's not like a major plot point, but it did tickle me a little bit. But Logan is experiencing some kind of sickness. He's not regenerating as fast anymore. You see pus oozing out of the cuts where his claws come out, and it's just, you really feel the burden of what it's like to be this guy. And he's essentially given up, right? He's essentially just resigned himself to a life of existing, of just, yeah, he'll beat up some guys who are trying to steal his limousine, steal the stuff off of his limousine, but he just wants to drive the limousine, make the money, take the money to Professor X for medicine and stuff. Maybe they can get away, to a better life. They keep talking about this Sun Chaser boat that they're going to buy. He's at one point actually on the phone trying to negotiate with someone who has one for sale, can't close the deal. And he just wants to live out the rest of his life in peace. But this is the movies, and people don't get to live the rest of their lives out in peace. So this woman comes to him trying to get him to help her out. And not her personally, but the girl that she has with her, who initially she claims is her daughter. And Wolverine at the beginning is not down with this. He's just like, I'm not a hero anymore. I don't want to help you. And she knows who he is. She calls him the Wolverine. It's the first time anybody mentions Wolverine in the film. You know, she calls him out as this hero, and he's like, that's not who I am. And it's telling that this movie doesn't have Wolverine in the title, that it's just Logan, because it's really about that core of who this guy is, stripped bare of his hero trappings, and just down to the soul of who this guy is. What's left over when everything else is gone, when all of his, or almost all of his mutant friends are gone, when, you know, all of the prestige and, you know, most of the power is gone. He's just scraping by in the desert. It's a powerful sentiment. And she says to him, listen, you need to help this girl get to North Dakota. All right. There's a safe place there. You've got to go. And ultimately he does take her. He's very hesitant. He does the whole refusal of the call. But he does eventually accept this challenge. And it's this sort of road trip movie, for lack of a better word, of them going across the US, trying to get to this place, trying to come to grips with aging and death and the certainty of mortality, even for a mutant, even for someone who's powerful like that. And ultimately the meaning, I think, of life, the idea that you pass something on, that it's not just about you, but that you find some meaning in something greater than yourself, that you find, that you pass something on to the next generation. And it's really powerful stuff. I mean, I saw someone comparing it to The Dark Knight in terms of quality, and great quality, but The Dark Knight, despite the fact that it felt very serious and very dramatic, still felt like an action movie to some extent, whereas Logan doesn't. There are action scenes, right? There are scenes where he's driving around in a car. There's a scene where he's beating people up and slicing people open and stabbing them in the head. And like, there is action. And I anybody who wants to say this is an action movie, I can't like categorically disagree with you. However, the action is at the service of something more. It's not just this, it has something to say. It's a meditation on the process of aging and what it means to live and to be old and to pass something on and to find hope in the younger generation. It's got all of this stuff, and it hits really hard, and it doesn't try to, to punch it up. Not that there's never any funny, like there's moments where you can laugh, or there's moments where you can cheer for the heroes, but it doesn't feel the need to fluff you up and make you feel super happy. It's perfectly happy to let you feel the punches and let you feel the loss and let you feel just all of the negatives as well. It's this sort of post everything movie, post American, post superheroes. It envisions a world where we're just sort of existing now. We've just sort of become, there's drone trucks. By the way, drone trucks get a bad rap in this movie. What? Just a little sidebar I had a problem with. But they actually hand wave it and say maybe, I just have a problem with drone trucks being worse drivers than people. But it's this world that's become largely automated. It's all factory systems now. And even the mutants, right? The X-23, the little girl who is a mutant, I assume you've seen the trailer. I don't think that's a spoiler. Her origin is not as a natural mutant. These mutants, for whatever reason, the mutants have started to disappear in the world of the film, but the government is artificially making these things, these mutant children, in attempt to create a super weapon. And that all plays into this theme again of what America is becoming, of the sort of commercialization and the industrialization of everything that we have. I don't necessarily 100% agree with that, but it is really beautifully layered in to the film at all levels. Again, from you know, the time when they stop at the farm and the guy shows them the giant harvesting machines and talks about the soft drinks, you know, pumping people full of corn syrup. All of this stuff plays a part in this, you know, and maybe it's not even a bad world, but it's a bad world for Logan. It's a world that Logan doesn't fit in anymore, and it's about him coming to terms with that. I don't know if I can say anything else without giving major spoilers, but I do think this is probably the best superhero movie you're going to see this year. I can't imagine a better one. I can imagine more fun ones, okay? I can definitely imagine Guardians of the Galaxy coming out, and I'm just getting a blast out of it, and I'm having a lot of fun. I will probably enjoy other movies and maybe other superhero movies more this year, but I can't imagine another superhero movie that is this poignant and this heavy and willing to take itself this seriously this year. I don't know if another superhero movie will ever win an Oscar. I know the Dark Knight did, and the Oscars tend to, you know, look side-eye at genre films, which, by the way, Oscars, not everything has to make you feel bad, okay? I'm talking up Logan and saying it's a serious film, and that's why it could possibly win an Oscar. We could give, like, some merit to things that make us laugh or smile or cheer, too. Those are good emotions, also, and also difficult to create. This is not the Oscars, how Albert fixes the Oscars thing, though. This is about Logan. I'll get back off this sawhorse. What is not a sawhorse? Soapbox. I'm riding the sawhorse away from the soapbox and saying that if you have watched any X-Men movie with Wolverine in it, especially, maybe not, I mean, Deadpool's fine. Great short before this movie. Great Deadpool short. Go see the Deadpool short. I won't spoil that. It's totally not within the tone of Wolverine at all. It's so different, but it's beautiful and wonderful Deadpool stuff. But if you've seen any of that stuff and you want to see where this character goes, I cannot recommend this highly enough. For any fan of the X-Men or Wolverine, it's amazing. If you're a fan of Westerns and sort of drama stuff, you like this. I'm trying to think of the kind of person who would turn their nose up at this, and I can't think of them. I mean, unless all you want is happiness and rainbows, in which case, you know what? Go wait for Kong Skull Island to come out, because I'm pretty sure Kong punching some skull crawlers in the face is going to be having me fist pumping and not sad at all. Hopefully. We're not talking about that. Logan was good. Thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe if you like this video and you want to see more like it. And I'll see you guys next week with another episode of the Human Echoes Rundown.